Well, the blue of the sky is showing today, so today's probably a good day to try and go out and do something and get some sun, get some vitamin D going. There's a cat on my lap, and I guess I'll show you what progress we've got in life here. So, one of the big things is the place is mostly insulated, except for that, and that, and that, and that, and that little strip above the door, and a few other little gaps. Everything is insulated. It's only an inch of insulation, but it's a lot nicer in here. It's somewhat livable. Right now, with the fire just getting started and the electric heat going, one space heater, 1500 watts, we've got 60 degrees in here, which isn't really awful. It's not ideal, it's not optimum, but it's not awful. And I've got the fire going, so it'll quickly cook me out of here and I'll have to leave. But it'll be nice and warm when I come back, and I'm freezing. So despite it being nice and warm and sunny out there, it's only 26 degrees. One more time, I'll refer to this thing. Only 26 degrees out there. So I've got 3 layers of socks and 3 layers on top and 3 layers on bottom, and I'll probably still be a little bit cold, but I figure I'll show you what we've got going here. So let's see. Basically, our setup is, you've seen it before, probably on this channel, but now we've got some insulation. We've got some temporary curtain stuff going on. This is not how we're going to keep it forever, but this is what we've got for the time being. And it works. Primary thing is to keep some more of the heat in at night. And our pantry's fully stocked, and we've got enough wood. The wood, by the way, we share supply with the rest of my family, so that's why you don't see me out chopping wood, because I don't. And when we do split wood, we use a log splitter, so we don't swing an axe that often unless we're making kindling. As far as making these chunks, it's all on a log splitter, because my back is a little bit too messed up to be splitting wood right now. So we've got a nice happy fire going. Can be difficult to keep it going because unfortunately we've burned down to where all we've got now is wet wood. So we don't always have the best situation when it comes to our fire. Some funky things like I tried to salvage this mirror from a vanity cabinet that had a mirror built into it, and it broke. So I just taped it up and made a square out of it. This is kind of gross, but it works. It's this whole structure, you have to understand, the main purpose of everything is utilitarian. Nothing in here looks pretty. This is purely just to give us a place to live and be warm and dry and stay alive. So things beyond the most basic fundamental human needs are kind of omitted here. And ideally we're going to sheet this so that when we move out of it, especially, it can still be used as a cabin for somebody or as a storage space or whatever, and can be a little bit nicer to stay in. Maybe put a nice coat of light colored paint on whatever we sheet it with so that it looks a little bit brighter in here, because this can be a little depressing. It's kind of gray all the time. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. Most of what's been going on lately has been more personal progress related. I'm in a master gardener class here. Caitlin's just plugging away. We're paying off debts, and really excited for spring because I want to get the garden going over here. Right now, we're still buried in enough ice and snow that we can't really do much, and our last frost date could be as late as June 1st. So it's going to be a little while still before we are actually gardening outside. I'm considering getting rid of this chair and replacing it with a rack that we could put plant starts on so that we have some stuff going a little bit early, especially peppers. Because I really like to grow peppers, but the growing season is just too short here for most of the peppers I like to grow. So I'm going to see if I can extend that by doing some space station gardening in here. But ultimately, we might need a little bit more heat to accomplish that because it is still a little bit cold. You see, if you get closer to the floor, you know, when I woke up this morning, it was 47 degrees on there. So still pretty cold in here. But we're making it. Slowly but surely, we're trudging along and surviving through winter. The cats are pretty satisfied. They don't really have a very difficult life. They just hang out. But that's about all I have to show inside. Let's show you what it's like outside. I put my boots on. They've got bags inside of them because they leak. These are pretty good boots, but they're also about 30 years old, so they're Sorel's. This is not an endorsement for Sorel. I didn't get paid by them. And, I mean, they are leaking, so they're not perfect. But they're also, like I said, about 30 years old, so they're older than, or about, the same age as me. And, yeah, they work. Just have to keep bags on my feet because they do leak a little bit and get wet on the inside sometimes. But it's better than not having winter boots. And the alternative is these, these are some Ariats. They're supposed to be like kind of hiking boot, farm work type shoes. And they absolutely deteriorated so fast. Can't really blame the manufacturer though. I beat them up pretty bad. I was out 24/7 working and really just absolutely wrecked them. And the way I walk, because my back is a little bit off kilter, I tend to wear shoes out a little bit quicker. It's getting better, but especially when I was wearing those shoes, I wore them out pretty quickly because of my back is kind of walking lopsided, and so, scraping and putting a lot of pressure on one foot. But anyway, I'm gonna get these boots on and we'll go outside. It's pretty icy out here this morning. What actually woke me up was the sound of all the ice expanding and crackling in the little built-in gutters here. This is what our thing looks like on the outside. I don't know if I've shown it before in videos, but here it is again. It's not the neatest thing, and overall our whole setup is pretty messy, but it's all about survival right now. It's skirted, but only temporarily. Ideally, I would sit there and use an angle grinder and cut those pieces to neatly fit instead of propping them up that way. But when I did that, I had 10 other projects on my mind, and that was the best I could do. So anyway, it's quite a nice day today. And it's just really cold. A big project that I'm looking at right now is on the days that I'm home, I'd like to go through and try to thin out the areas around us. We've got about 4 acres on this side of the road, and this is our area to manage. And the trees that are around us are mostly very shade intolerant, which you would never know looking at them, but they're primarily very shade intolerant species. We've got larches and hemlocks and a couple aspens, some ponderosa, not pinyon, and some fir trees. A little bit of other variety, but that's the bulk of what we've got. Oh yeah, and western red cedar. And the larches are mistakenly called tamaracks, but They're not actually the tamarack that the Midwest people are used to. But being as shade intolerant as they are, these super dark come over here and you're suddenly in the shade. Also, I'm standing on a pretty big hump of frozen snow. But these are supposed to be at least about 10 feet between them, because most of them are also not that fire tolerant. They will die if they're burned. There is some fire adaptation in the forest. Ponderosa pines are the best adapted. I don't recall the scale of adaptation for the other trees in our forest, but those are the most fire resistant, most fire tolerant, and the problem is that with how dense this forest is, if it were to burn, it would kill all the seed stock because it would burn too hot. This is unnaturally dense. And if you look, these trees are kind of like toothpicks. They're really tall and really smushed together. And that's not really the best approach. They should be a little bit stockier and a little bit more spread apart. And it would make it admittedly a lot nicer for us to live here if they were that way as well. It's nice to think about having this really dense thicket here, but ultimately that isn't the healthiest way for the trees to survive. So there's a lot of thinning for us to do. And while I'm working on my back and trying to get it in better condition, I'm going to slowly, very slowly, work on thinning out these trees one at a time and try to bring more sun into this forest. And another problem of them being so thick is the lack of drought tolerance. The problem being that, especially in the summers, it's very dry here. And so you have several months without any rain. And that can really stress some of these trees, especially when they are competing for limited water already. And doing that where they really clump together and everybody's reaching for the sky and nobody can quite get there. So, best thing we can do is thin everything out. And we're going to leave a few thick patches because seems like, and I need to do more research on this, and that may change the outcome in the course of what we do, but it seems like the ghost pipe herb, which we do use, I use it quite a lot for its painkiller effect. It's not exactly a painkiller. I don't recall the technical term, but it helps you tolerate pain better. It's not so much a painkiller. It's not exactly a anti-inflammatory either. It's a different effect, but it works really well. I use quite a lot of it here. Helps me survive and not go crazy while I go through the very slow recovery process from my back injuries. But we use a lot of that, and we need to save some of its habitat, and it seems like it being an epiphyte, I believe that's the correct term. I'm still learning all this, but it being an epiphyte, it doesn't particularly need or want a lot of sun. So having some of these thickets might actually be beneficial, especially if we've seen ghost pipe in them in the past. Prefer to leave them the way they are. Another option would be looking into propagating the ghost pipe so we have a little bit more supply here. We also have an assortment of mushrooms that tend to like fairly dark spots in the forest, so those are another thing to consider. Overall, though, we have a pretty good life here. It's slow progress. We are not that well off, but I would say we're privileged in that we have a place to live and basic stability in our lives, which in these times, quote unquote, is a lot to ask for, seems like. Not a lot of people have those things. So having those things, I do feel rather lucky. It does frustrate me sometimes being so far away from everything. It takes us an hour to get to, hour and a half even, to get to a city of any real consequence. So if we want to go socialize, it's quite a trek. Trying to find local friends, but it's a slow process. And trying to find ways I can be involved locally in the community, but that's also a slow process. And there are aspects of my way of thinking that don't really fit in that well locally, but we just roll with it and we do what we can. It is giving us the massive benefit of being able to pay off debts. That's huge. If we were living in a city somewhere having to pay rent, we wouldn't be able to pay off our debts. We would be stuck, and that would suck. I think one of the websites that estimates debt payoff stuff gave me like a 14-year timeline if I were to pay just a little bit extra, which wouldn't even be possible if I was living in the city because it underestimated how much I actually have to pay every month. And so if I was paying rent in the city, paying utilities in the city and higher taxes and so on and so forth, I would be stuck for a long time, and so would Caitlin. So I'm very grateful that we have this opportunity to get back on our feet after New Mexico didn't pan out for us the way I was hoping it would. It's not to say New Mexico's a bad place. It just didn't work for us in the moment, and we had to kind of come here and get on our feet. I think that we have a lot of potential here. I see a lot of opportunity in getting education and growing food, and there's a lot of opportunity here and a lot of resources, and that's what I came for ultimately. So it's just a matter of getting through winter and seeing what happens after that. But anyway, hopefully that gives all of you, some sort of peek into what's going on around here and how things are going. And I hope you stick around and continue to watch us on our journey as we slowly make our way through this very chaotic and sometimes unstable thing that is called life, and figure out the best way to live it. But thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Support me on Patreon if you can. If you can't, it's fine. No worries. I'll keep making videos anyway. And until next time.